In chapter 6. The envelope was postmarked Biarritz and contained a photograph of my brother frolicking on the beach with a fabulous brunette. Me and Yvette on the French Riviera. P.S. I forgot to tell you that root beer might be dropping by. He sometimes does this thing where it looks like he's dead, but it's really okay. Root beer was already gone by the time we woke up that morning. None of us had heard him leave, which seemed kind of strange. Not noticing root beer was like not noticing Europe. There was no note, but wherever he was, at least he'd left the car this time. It was parked in front of the deli. Maybe he's gone for good, said the Peach. Shh, admonished Don. We don't want to jinx ourselves. I threw down the employment section in disgust. Well, Don, it looks like we blew our chance at having important jobs when we got canned making bubble wands. We just bundled the Peach off to Dumb Plastics Unlimited with a sarcastic "Have a nice day at work, honey." The two of us had gotten up early to prepare him with a brown bag lunch consisting of the tidbits we could find in the trash dumpster outside, but he mentioned something about lunch meetings and left us our garbage, which was starting to smell as we poured over the paper. If he's gonna keep making us look like idiots, the least he could do is fall for our jokes, was Don's opinion. All the good summer jobs are taken, I complained. We're too late for anything decent. I wish your uncle had warned us he'd only need feeders for 5 days. How was he supposed to know the great doctor of fuzzology was gonna stick his nose into everything? Hey, can I type 80 words a minute? I had to laugh. You'd be lucky to do 80 words a month. See, Don typed with his right index finger. Click, click, click. Don was undaunted. Whoa, this is a fantastic job. Your own office, your secretary, great money, short hours. We should call these guys. I looked over his shoulder to his pointing finger. That's for a brain surgeon. Oh, nah, too gucky. But he stuck to the job search, and by 10:30 he was gainfully employed. True, he was a delivery boy for the local supermarket, but it was more than I've been able to come up with. Still, when he rode up in front of 1 Pitt Street on the supermarket bicycle, I just couldn't stop laughing. For starters, it was one of those old-style bicycles, and it was huge. Don was on tiptoe when each pedal reached his lowest point. There was a giant pink basket in front of the handlebars and another one behind the seat. And a bell, great, big, shiny, and silver. Here was Mr. Big City Cool, riding around on a bike he wouldn't be caught dead on in Owen Sound. What's the bell for? I called from the stoop. Just in case you get stuck behind a Maserati and you have to let the driver let you pass? Go ahead and laugh, snarled Don. I absolutely refuse to have Peach Fuzz paying my bills. It was the first really sweltering day of the summer, and the air was heavy and humid. I felt sorry for Don, who would probably be half dead by dinner time in all that heat. As soon as he had pedaled out of sight, I escaped back up to the air conditioning. Just inside the door, I paused, looking distastefully at the employment section lying open on the beanbag chair. Even thinking about the tiny black print made my eyes bug out. My hands were filthy with ink from the newspaper. Looking for a job was harder than working. I scanned the first couple of ads. Experience required, experience required. How are you supposed to get experience if no one will hire you because you don't have experience? When you really hate what you're doing, you notice stuff you normally wouldn't pick up on. For the first time, I realized what total slobs Ferguson and Don were. Our sleeping arrangements consisted of the bed, the couch, and the beanbag chair, with root beer taking the floor directly over where he happened to be standing the instant he declared himself officially tired. The Peach had left the bed unmade, and Mr. Wonderful's couch looked like a bomb site, sheets and pillows all over the place, wadded up sweat socks and underwear. This was the guy who thought a few wrinkles in a shirt was a disaster. Apparently, his nattiness only extended to those articles of clothing that went on the outside, visible to the casual observer. A few minutes of tidying up wouldn't kill the job search, and who wanted to live in a pigsty? Pigsty. That was my mother's word. It referred usually to my room. I pulled up short in some alarm. In the great summer of independence, here I was doing voluntarily what I could usually get out of at home. Oh no! Well, at least at home, when the debris piled up above my nostrils, I could always hang out in another room. Here, one room was it. It was only common sense to keep it neat. The problem with straightening up was that I noticed other things about the apartment. Not only was it messy, but it was also pretty dirty and dusty. Joe's vacuum cleaner was our old one from Owen Sound, and it was incredibly loud. I was 8 years old before I finally figured out it wasn't a monster come to eat the family. Plotnik was banging on the pipes and screaming for me to turn it off, but I forged on until I'd covered every square inch except the hallowed ground on which sat Root Beer's paper bag of underwear. I didn't want to fool with that no matter how bad the dust got. I noticed that I'd already used up a complete hour of job hunting time. Then came the mopping stage. I doubt Joe had ever mopped in his life, but just in case, I checked in the broom closet for cleaner. I opened up the door and gawked. There, in the dim glow of a safe light, squatted Root Beer Racinette, developing photographic prints in various trays of chemicals. I slammed the door so fast that a second later, it seemed that the whole thing had merely been a hallucination. When the beating of my heart slowed down a little, I steeled myself and knocked politely. Root Beer? Yeah? Came the voice from within. What are you doing? Making some prints. You're a photographer? Guy needs distraction from all the pressures, you know, came the voice. People are dropping like flies from executive burnout. I stared at the closet door. You're not an executive. That makes it even riskier, Root Beer replied. If you've got a job, you know what to do every day. But me, no sooner do I get up than the decisions start. I could feel the stress eating away at me. But all that stuff in there must have cost hundreds, I protested. Worrying about money is the #1 case of burnout, said Root Beer. So I spent it all, and I feel great. Hey, you can look at my first picture. Watching Root Beer crawl out of a cramped closet is like when someone opens a suitcase and out comes a full-grown bull elephant. In his hand, he clutched a gleaming wet 8x10 glossy and proudly held it out before me. It's white, I blurted out. Root Beer examined the blank photograph. Guess you exposed it when you opened the door. Oh no, I'd ruined Root Beer Racinette's picture. It was as though I'd walked up in front and infected him with executive burnout. Sorry? I quavered. Oh, don't worry, said Root Beer. Gotta have a hobby, but nobody says I gotta be any good at it. He held his picture between his thumb and his forefinger and began to blow on it softly. His whole roll came out exactly like that, but the first picture was his favorite, so it went up on the wall right over the stereo. Root Beer signed it with a green crayon that appeared out of the poncho. It looks great, I said. See how relaxed and happy I am, added Root Beer, and he fell into Manchurian bush meditation on the spot. I mopped as best I could, working around Root Beer, and by the time I'd taken out the garbage, mailed a couple of letters, it was 4:10, time to go back to the job search. I paused. 4:10 was almost 4:15, which was just a quarter hour before 4:30. Most people are winding down their day by then. Some even knock off half an hour early, especially those important enough to be responsible for hiring new guys. In other words, not only would I be wasting my time in applying for anything now, but I'd actually be hurting my chances by pestering people so late. I should have been disappointed. I felt great. And after all, it wasn't as though I'd wasted the day. The apartment was spotless. Another of my mother's words, watch it, Cardone. Speak of the devil, the phone rang. My mother. home. I knew it! You're sick! I managed a high-pitched giggle. I'm not sick. It's my day off. Every day was my day off. Well, I was just going to leave a message on your machine to let you know your father and I will be at Murphy's tonight in case you need us. The meaning was clear. If I happened to decide that I wanted to go home during the 2 hours that they'd be out, I could call them at the Murphys for instant rescues. I won't need you, I assured her. I glanced at the dead rhinoceros lying on the floor. Everything's fine. Bye. It was unnerving to be with Root Beer when he was meditating. Sure, I knew he wasn't dead, but it was scary to be in the same room with somebody lying there not breathing. So I went for a walk. You can't spend all day cooped up anyway. It isn't healthy. I walked up Bathurst in the direction of where Don said Jessica's place was. You know, if I could accidentally on purpose run into her, I could strike up a conversation. Maybe working there how Don had tried to take off after the Moontrix head bonk scene. I would try to portray myself as the strong, silent type. You know, not too nice, but with a manly sense of responsibility. Of course, Don was my friend, and you weren't supposed to screw up your friends. But he didn't deserve Jessica anyway. He hadn't even called her yet. And besides, if I somehow managed to steal her away from Mr. Wonderful, he'd have another girlfriend and nothing flat. On the other hand, waiting for someone to go for Cardone could take years. I looked up from window to window, up and down the street, half believing it wasn't a waste of time. Did I expect a golden aura to be emanating from the building that housed Jessica and her legs? Finally, I returned to the stoop in front of 1 Pitt Street to wait for Ferguson and Don to get home from work. I was already sweating like crazy. The air was like vaporized oatmeal. I waved at God's grandmother as she jogged by, energetic, cool, and sweat-free. I saw the pink baskets first, piled high with bags of groceries, plodding their way through the heavy traffic. Between them pedaled a very hot and tired-looking Don Champion. Suddenly, a long silver-stretched limousine shot out of nowhere and passed Don too close. Mr. Wonderful swerved to avoid it and put himself out of control. His front wheel touched the curb, and the bicycle dropped out of view. But I could see groceries flying in all directions. Bottles, cans, fruits, and vegetables bounced off the roofs and hoods of other cars. Oblivious to this havoc, the driver of the limo turned onto Pitt Street and pulled up right in front of me. The door opened, and out climbed the Peach. Thanks for the ride, Mr. Ropp. See you tomorrow. Don was on his feet by now, examining a carton of eggs. He saw who it was getting out of the limo, just as 12 yolks spilled out of the package onto his shirt. Peach Fuzz! Repugnant as the thought of handing money over to Plotnik was, we decided to eat in the deli. There was just so much tuna fish and peanut butter a guy could stomach, and we had enough cash for 2 corned beef sandwiches between the 3 of us. The Peach and I waited out front for Don, who had to roll the mangled delivery bicycle back to the supermarket. Well, right off 1 bike and 1 job, he told us when he got home. Guess who just got fired, thanks to the fuzzy skin of a certain fruit I could name? Not to mention that it could have been me bent into a pretzel along with the bike. Ferguson shrugged. It's your uncle's car. Besides, if that bicycle had been designed with the center of balance a little farther forward, didn't you explain that it wasn't your fault? I asked Don quickly. They didn't believe me. They wouldn't even pay me for today because of the bike. That's the only part that bothers me. I was gonna quit that bogus slavery anyway. Why? Don snorted. Are you kidding? The pay stinks, and you have to ride around that bicycle, sweating your guts out, while little kids follow you singing, Hey, Mr. Grocery Man! And you're a target for every dog and psychopath in the neighborhood. This one kid, 5 years old tops, yells, Hey, Mr. Grocery Man, think fast! And hurls this huge dart bomb in my face. But that's not the real crusher. Check this out. He paused for effect. For lunch, I grabbed some Doritos and hung out in the park. So I catch a rap with these two great-looking girls. Everything's going terrific, and they're complaining all day how they've got nothing to do this summer, and I'm thinking, we're in. Just as I'm about to suggest we all get together, they see the bike, and it's game over. They couldn't stop laughing long enough for me to ask them out. I mean, I refuse to hold any job that messes with my love life. Guess that rules out the priesthood, Ferguson commented seriously. Wait a second! That was me. What about Jessica? John shrugged carelessly. You seriously expect me to spend this whole summer with one girl? We're here for freedom, remember? Those of us who were not Mr. Wonderful felt a flash of extremely unfriendly annoyance. Aren't we getting a little greedy here? I hoped I sounded socially aware rather than just plain jealous. I mean, you haven't even called Jessica and you're already planning a harem. I have to play it cool, said Don reasonably. It's good for them to sit by the phone. Keeps them humble. Let's eat, said Ferguson. Hey, listen, I said as we seated ourselves at the usual booth. When we get upstairs, there's going to be a blank piece of paper up on the wall. Act like you love it. They looked up at me questioningly, but by that time Plotnik was already bearing down on us, shaking his head. Mr. Champion, I'm very disappointed in you, picking up girls on the job. No wonder you got fired. That had nothing to do with it, Don said sulkily. I stared at the landlord. How could you know all of that? Well, Mr. Plotnik evasively, you were talking outside. Do you read lips? He shrugged. Little hobby. And you, Mr. Peach, I must say I'm impressed with your choice of travel arrangements. Riding around like a tycoon in a big, great car. You're doing very well for yourself, for someone who is just only a house guest. Thank you, said the Peach. Hey, Mr. Plotnik, I piped up, the spaghetti special looks great. What do you think? He snorted haughtily. The food at the Olympiad Delicatessen is among the finest in the world. The problem is, I continued, we've only got $5, but we promised to give you the rest on Friday. Plotnik grabbed the menu from my hand and made an elaborate show of reading the cover. Oh, what a relief! For a minute I thought it said Salvation Army! Nobody has a charge account here, least of all a couple of unemployed no-goodniks. Hey, protested Don, I went by the car wash on my way home, and they said they'd probably have a job for me starting tomorrow, so there. Plotnik clasped his hands in ecstasy. A car wash attendant living in my building, the prestige! Listen, I'll be a specialist, the chrome polisher. Plotnik fanned himself with his apron. It's too much for an old man. Hey, Mr. Champion, big deal. Come on, Mr. Plotnik, coaxed Ferguson. I definitely have a job, and I can pay you on Friday. Our landlord held firm. For all we know, the world could end on Thursday. What good would money do you then? The Peach persisted. I would die happier. Ordering 2 corned beef on rye cut in thirds. I went to the car wash with Don the next morning, but they only needed 1 chrome polisher. Too many subcompacts, not enough chrome. So Don started work and I picked up the paper and went home. I had just buried myself in the employment section when Root Beer burst out of the broom closet waving pictures. Hey Jason, check this out! 36 high-contrast extreme close-ups of a cockroach. Where did you take these? Right in the closet, crowed Root Beer, blowing on the prints. Talk about convenient! I emptied half a can of bug spray into the apartment. Even with the window wide open, it hung in the air like fog. Then I remembered what my mother went through the year the ants got in. She had to empty the kitchen cupboard, spray around, wash every dish, plate, cup, saucer, glass, knife, fork, and spoon, check all the food, move the fridge, ditto the stove, poison the drains, and then put everything back. I followed it all step by painstaking step. It interrupted my job search for a day and a half. Grunting and groaning, I pushed the refrigerator back into its place and plugged it in. Root Beer looked up from the electronic flash he was attaching to his camera. Seems like a lot to go through for one little cockroach, he commented. He, who could have lifted the fridge with his little finger and saved me a quadruple hernia. There's no such thing as one cockroach, I croaked in a very tired imitation of my mother's pep talk from the ant infestation. If there's one, there are 100. And if you give them time to start having babies, forget it. But there was only one. I brought him inside myself. Found him in the garbage outside. He looked photogenic. Then, to add insult to injury, the photogenic cockroach had the gall to stroll right across the carpet in front of me. After all that bug spray, all those traps, all that poison, he was as perky as anything. Who did he think he was, Rasputin? I hit him with the newspaper, and he perked no more. And by the time I cooled off, it was after 2 o'clock. A lot of people take off Friday afternoons in the summer. Besides, there were bug guts all over the employment section. Yuck! It was payday, and money animated apartment 2C like wind in the sails of a 3-masted schooner. It was only Ferguson's salary plus 2 days chrome polishing pay from Don, but it meant the end of $5.86 per person per week, and it seemed like a fortune. Don was bouncing around the place, hooting and laughing because Ferguson had a date. I believe in miracles, he shouted, spraying his cologne at the peach, who was trying to get ready. There is a woman ugly and desperate enough to waste a Friday night on peach fuzz. Ferguson just smiled and combed his hair. What are we doing tonight? I asked Don. Mr. Wonderful reached for the phone. I think Jessica's cooled her heels long enough, and maybe she can scare up a friend for you. He dialed. Hello, Jess? It's Don Champion. How have you been? Ferguson headed out the door. Hey, you want the car? I offered. No, thanks. We can take the bus. See you later. He leaned back in towards Don and said, Tell her I'll be there in 5 minutes. And then he was gone. Don didn't catch it at all, and it took a few seconds to sink in with me. You got plans, huh? Don was saying. We'll break 'em. Oh, you can't. Well, that's no problem. No, don't worry about it. Later. He hung up. Bummer, she's already got a date. It was starting to hit me. I think I know who. He said, and she said, I grabbed Don, and we raced into the bathroom to the window. There was the peach, wending his way up Bathurst. Impossible, Don said firmly. No chance. But 2 minutes later, Ferguson reappeared, hand in hand with Jessica Lincoln. Don was very calm. There's only one explanation. Jessica is insane. Poor girl. Good thing I didn't get mixed up with her. You didn't call her all week, I said, in a feeble attempt to defend the peach. What the hell was going on here? Now she was dating Ferguson? How did that happen? Did I miss something? I sat down heavily on the edge of the bathtub, my own hopes for Jessica completely dashed. I couldn't imagine what she was thinking about, but I knew exactly what she wasn't thinking about. Me. I must have really caught her eye that night. Maybe my shirt had the same pattern as the wallpaper at Moon Tricks. Well, shrugged Don, heading back into the living room. I always knew Peach Fuzz was an idiot, but I didn't think he was a sleazebag. As for Jessica, her loss. Now, what are we going to do tonight? Why don't you stay home and help me with my stamp collection? Asked Root Beer from the beanbag chair. What stamp collection? I asked, wandering to the sofa and slumping down on it. It's my new hobby. Stamp collecting is a great way to relax and get my mind off all the pressures. But your hobby's photography, I protested. What about the darkroom and the broom closet? He dismissed this with a wave of his beefy hand. Can't see a thing in there, it's dark. He shook his shaggy head. I don't think this is going to be very relaxing. Everything is so small. He held up tweezers, which looked like a straight pin in his mammoth paw. I'm supposed to pick up stamps with this. I can't even pick up this. I asked the guy to sell me bigger stamps, but he didn't have any. I was stunned, but But you were still snapping pictures 2 hours ago! Root Beer shrugged. The guy at the pawn shop gave me big bucks for the enlarger. Oh, I said. Come to think of it, I'd gone out for some air that afternoon, mostly to parade myself up and down Bathurst, where stupid Jessica lived. It was half an hour tops. But somewhere in there, Root Beer must have left the apartment of photographer and returned a stamp collector. It boggled the mind, but then again, so did Root Beer. On the way out, Don posed the question, what is he relaxing from? Executive burnout. We giggled all the way downstairs. Then I'm going to pause it now here. We'll continue the rest of this chapter next week. Probably do some editing when I make the final video.